Welcome to lesson 2.4.3b. In this lesson we're looking at cellular respiration's Krebs cycle and the electron transport chain. You can find this information in your textbook as well in section 9.2. Alright, so let's get right into it and take a look at and see what happens during the Krebs cycle. Remember that during glycolysis we broke down one glucose molecule into two pyruvic acids. We also called those pyruvates. And they were 3 carbon molecules, and both of these are going to go to the Krebs cycle. Alright, so during the Krebs cycle, the second stage of cellular respiration, we're going to take those pyruvic acids that we made during glycolysis, send them into the Krebs cycle, and make more ATP, and we're also going to take carbons away and make carbon dioxide. Now this cycle is also known as the citric acid cycle because citric acid is one of the first compounds formed during this series of reactions. This reaction is also the first reaction that takes place in the mitochondria. So we're in the mitochondria here. Meaning we've entered what we call aerobic respiration. Alright? Glycolysis was anaerobic, meaning we were not using oxygen. The Krebs cycle and the electron transport chain are termed aerobic, meaning that we are using oxygen. Alright, so citric acid production, we're taking that pyruvic acid, or that pyruvate, and we're sending it into the mitochondria through the outer mitochondrial membrane, through the inner mitochondrial membrane, into the matrix. After that 3 carbon molecule gets into the matrix, it's going to go through a reaction where we right away take a carbon away from it, making carbon dioxide. We are also going to take a electron carrier, NAD+, and we're going to make an NADH. We're going to give electrons away as we break that carbon off to NADH. That leaves us with 2 carbons left. It goes through another reaction, and we get acetyl-CoA. This is a compound name that we need to know. It is a 2 carbon molecule that is going to enter the citric acid cycle. As acetyl-CoA enters the cycle, it's going to combine with a 4 carbon molecule to make a 6 carbon citric acid. Alright, so here's citric acid. So in this cycle, we need to know acetyl-CoA and citric acid. In the next 2 links, we're taking carbons off of the citric acid. Remember that citric acid is 6 carbons. And we're going to take one of those carbons off, and we're going to make a carbon dioxide. And then we're going to produce another NADH, and then take another carbon off, and we're going to make another carbon dioxide molecule. Remember that these carbon dioxide molecules are going to be released into the atmosphere. Now the 4 carbon molecule that's left over is eventually going to be recycled so that we can go through the reaction again. But the energy that we get by releasing, breaking and rearranging these bonds is going to continue to make us, so here's 1 NADH, 2, 3, 4 NADHs that we're making during this cycle. We're also making 1 FADH2. FAD is another electron carrier that we're going to use, and so when it picks up electrons, we are getting FADH2. The other thing that we're doing as we rearrange these molecules, these carbon molecules, is we're producing an ATP, and that's going to be used to go do the cell's activity. So here's that ADP, and we're going to make ourselves an ATP. All of the NADHs and FADH2 are going to go to the electron transport chain, just like our NADH did from glycolysis. Remember that each glucose gave us 2 pyruvic acids. So we are going to go through this cycle 2 times for every glucose. Therefore, not only do we get 3 carbon dioxides from each turn of the cycle, so we're going to get a total of 6 carbon dioxide molecules. We're going to get 2 ATP molecules. And what's most important in the cycle is that we're making a total of 8 NADHs and 2 FADH2s. These are 10 electron carriers that we're going to use to make a lot of ATP in the electron transport chain. So let's look to see how we use those high energy electrons from the high energy electron carriers in the electron transport chain to make all of this extra energy. So we've done the Krebs cycle in the matrix of the mitochondria. We're going to take those NADHs and FADH2s that we made there, and we're going to they're going to donate their electrons to the electron transport chain. Excuse me. As the electrons move through, remember that the electrons are losing a little bit of energy as they go through the chain. That energy that is lost is taking the hydrogen out of the matrix and pushing it through the inner mitochondrial membrane into this intermembrane space in the mitochondria. That creates a high concentration of hydrogens in that membranous space. Because we have a high concentration of hydrogens on the outside of the inner membrane and a low concentration on the inside, those hydrogens are going to want to leak back through, and they're going to leak back through ATP synthase. So my hydrogens are going to leak back through this synthase. As it leaks back through, it creates a little motor that turns, and we're going to get an ADP molecule attached to a phosphate group, and we're going to make ATP. Once those hydrogens are back in the matrix, the electrons are going to finish the chain, and the electrons are going to combine with oxygen that we've breathed in. So we breathe in oxygen, we get the hydrogen back, they're going to come in, and those electrons, and we're going to create water. That water is either going to be released in the body through sweat or through our respiration. We're going to actually breathe it out. So let's look at how much energy we've actually generated through all of this cellular respiration. Well, in the presence of oxygen, we have glycolysis out in the cytoplasm, and we're going to produce 2 ATP. We're also going to produce NADH, excuse me. All right? And then in the Krebs cycle, we produce 2 ATP, and we get out carbon dioxide. Remember, that's being released into the atmosphere. And we're also getting out a total of 8 NADHs, and we're also getting 2 FADH2s. Those are all going down to the electron transport chain, and when we get to the electron transport chain, we're using the oxygen that we breathe in, and we're sending that through the system, and we're going to produce 32 ATP. And once we send those hydrogens back through, making our ATP, remember we've got the hydrogens moving back through, those hydrogens are going to produce with the, or combine with the electrons and the oxygens that have been through the electron transport chain, and we're going to produce water. Alright, so we've taken in glucose, we've taken in oxygen, and we've produced water, carbon dioxide, and a ton of energy. And remember that this is the entire reason that we've gone through this process. Now, that 36 ATP represents about 36% of the total energy of glucose. The remaining is given off, is released as heat. Now remember, I said earlier before glycolysis that we can generate ATP from just about any source, even though we've modeled it using glucose in this example. Complex carbohydrates like glycogen and starch can be broken down into simple sugars like glucose and other things that can be used in the in glycolysis. Lipids and proteins can be broken down into molecules that can enter the Krebs cycle or glycolysis at one of several places. So we can use carbohydrates, lipids, and proteins as an energy source. That's the end of today's lesson. Please make sure that you understand everything, and if there's anything that you don't understand, write your questions down in your Cornell notes so that you can ask them in class the next time we see each other. Have a good night.